The past election was stolen by Marxist Democrats. Donald Trump is still our president. Antifa is framing the patriotic right. You've probably heard comments similar to these in the past couple years. Whether it's your uncle at Thanksgiving, one of your high school teachers, or even the man that your mom watches on TV. We don't need to get too far into why this is incorrect. I'm sure there are plenty of other sources that'll tell you why. What I'd rather look at is why these people believe this. There's a lot of misinformation about the January 6th attack at the Capitol, as well as what led to it. Facts are that Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election against sitting President Donald Trump. In response, Donald Trump claimed that he framed the election with no evidence whatsoever. Despite this being the clear truth, there are a lot of places where these facts have been twisted. There's a really great article by Robert Maranto called COVID, Capitol Insurrection, and a Lack of Education that focuses on the cause of the attack and what we can learn from it. The article does a really great job discussing how the events on January 6th were able to take place, as well as what specific changes in American culture were necessary for it. Reading the article, the first thing he mentions is COVID. In the first sentence, he states, "It goes without saying that 2020 will go down as a year of COVID." Looking at the title and then reading that first sentence, Maranto gets a lot across by saying very little. It's left to the reader to tie this inherent connection between COVID and the insurrection. Maranto doesn't say it directly in the text, but conveys to us that the insurrection, being something that has never happened before, could only be caused by an occurrence that led to a huge societal change in America. In 2020, that was COVID. In this way, Maranto looks at the historical context behind the Capitol insurrection to search for a change in pattern that could have caused such an unprecedented event. Looking at the culture of the moment and seeing what was an extreme change they were facing. What he's getting at by discussing COVID at the beginning of this article about the insurrection is that COVID set the stage for the insurrection to take place. By engaging in background information about the setting of the event, Maranto successfully brings up a point as to what triggered the insurrection. What part of your own life was affected most by COVID? If you said education, you're like a lot of other people. This is where Maranto takes the argument next. The next section focuses mainly on the education system. The structure is linear and has purpose. As he's established that COVID made a big change in America, he discusses what specifically it changed the most. He's conveying to the audience that education is one of the things in America that was affected the most by COVID. This is especially clear when he states that professors emphasize the process of learning rather than the content. What he means by this is that COVID changed the most important aspects of how people were educated, which isn't what they were taught, but how they were taught. If you were in high school when this happened, you've probably seen it. Lockdown made people more impatient for answers to everything, so it became much easier to spread false information. All this is a very well executed establishment of facts that allows for the reader to make the connections about all the different topics discussed. And although there was focus on how people got sucked into this right-wing rabbit hole, Maranto makes it clear that this happens on either side of the political spectrum. In the time of COVID, there was misinformation on the left as well as the right, and this was just an example of the right. It's not exactly a study of right-wing behavior, but more of a right-wing example of how societal behavior can erupt under the right circumstances. By discussing the insurrection, Maranto makes a lesson of how to look into the past to observe the causes of a major event that could happen in the future. In turn, this can help us understand the future with just a little reverse engineering. By observing the societal changes of our current society, we will be able to predict what kind of unprecedented events will take place in the future. Hopefully, if we're smart enough, we can look at the Capitol insurrection and see what happened, what we can change, and how to stop this from happening again in the future.